The Waters of Madness, Part 1, by Mind to Myth. Chief Petty Officer Jordan Brownell leaned on the table, hard. His sturdy frame appeared even more rigid, if that were possible, and he was clearly irritated. "I want to know about the outbreak, Dr. Murray," he glared. These fools, why couldn't they understand? Now was not the time for this, and they were asking the wrong questions. We needed to get out of here. We weren't safe. "Answer me, Doctor," Brownell shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "We need answers." "I can't tell you what I don't know." "Then start with what you do know. Tell me about the virus." "Fine. Might as well have a nice conversation before we all die." I slumped into my chair and leaned my head against the back, and Brownell settled down as well. "You see, we thought the virus was gone. There were no new cases reported in over a month. We battled this thing for 10 years and beat it, or so we thought. What happened on that ship was unprecedented." "But secondary waves are a common occurrence with pandemics, correct?" "Yes, but this was different. Everyone on board tested negative. Passengers, crew, everyone. It's almost impossible that we'd have a secondary outbreak so rapidly. And the virus was just the beginning. It all started with the Spire." I boarded the MS Ocean Liberty on the 10th of March, 2030. It was the first cruise ship open after the world declared victory over the spiral virus pandemic, officially known as ETNV 2020. I felt apprehensive at first, but after all the passengers and crew were tested and declared free of the virus, formality at this point, I look forward to weeks full of sun and adventure in the company of my new wife, Lydia. We crossed the plankway to the cruise ship and I glanced to the sky. The Spire, the giant, mysterious object that entered Earth's orbit 10 years prior, loomed overhead. I stopped in my tracks and just stared for a moment. It seemed closer. Something just wasn't right. During a dinner of lobster, salad, and wine, I brought it up with Lydia. "Hey, Lyd, what do you think of the Spire?" She glanced out the window. "Think? I don't know. It's curious, but I haven't thought about it in a while. It's just been there and hasn't done anything since it arrived." "But what about the virus?" She took a sip of wine. "I don't think the virus came from the Spire. Timing is just a coincidence. Besides, the virus showed up months after the Spire." I shrugged. But something didn't feel right. The Spire gave me a bad feeling. I rubbed the red scar encircling my wrist and forearm, a permanent reminder of the virus. Does the Spire look bigger? Or has it changed position? This time Lydia didn't even look out the window. "No," she laughed. "Is there something else bothering you? When I made these arrangements, I didn't know you were scared of the water." I felt hot anger creep up in my neck and into my face. "I'm not scared of the water, just the idea that it's so deep and unforgiving makes me a bit hesitant." "You're being awfully touchy about it for not being afraid of the water," she giggled. "You're ornery," I said with a smile. How could I not love her? She was bold, opinionated, and wildly intelligent. She could be fiery at times, but always she cared for me more deeply than anyone ever had or will. "Love, by tomorrow you'll be enjoying yourself more than you have in 10 years. "Yeah, you're probably right." The door opened. Lydia and I both turned towards our uninvited guest. "Mr. and Mrs. Murray," the man began. "Dr. and Dr. Murray," Lydia corrected. "My apologies. Captain Abad requests your presence in his briefing room immediately." Lydia and I looked at each other. I could see the confusion on her face, mingled with just a hint of anger at the interruption, but I squeezed her hand and nodded. We followed the sailor into the service elevator. Down we went into the belly of the ship. I could smell cooking as we passed the kitchen. We followed the sailor through the empty ship until we went up a small elevator to the crew's quarters. Captain Abad waited for us in a conference room. "Ah, the Doctor's Murray," he said. I approached and put up my hand, but he refused, and instead shook his head. "I can't. You'll understand soon enough." He paused and looked at Lydia. "I understand you're both doctors. What of, if you don't mind me asking?" Lydia cleared her throat. "I'm a doctor in anatomy and physiology, specializing in cancer research." She looked at me. "I'm a vet." "Bullshit," Lydia scoffed. He's a veterinary researcher and a tenured professor at the University of Wisconsin, where he previously taught biochemistry. He is the smartest man I know. Embarrassed, I glanced between Lydia and the captain. Captain, what's this about? He sighed. My ship has an outbreak of the spiral virus. That's impossible, Lydia laughed. Everyone was checked yesterday, all negative. The incubation period is at least 10 days. You must be joking. There was a silence in the room that was unsettling. The stern look on the captain's face hadn't changed. This is not a joke. This has no precedence, Lydia protested. It doesn't match up with the biological characteristics we've battled for the last 10 damn years. She looked towards me for reassurance, and I nodded in return. This didn't make any sense. It was probably just the flu, with everyone testing negative 1 day ago. The virus wouldn't have had time to propagate amongst the passengers. Are you sure this isn't the flu? Abad shook his head. Yes, I'm damn sure this isn't the flu. I wouldn't have summoned you here if it were. Our head doctor and his medical team have confirmed it. Not only that, these passengers are showing symptoms. The red spiral rash has already appeared. Lydia covered her mouth. Oh my God. This is new, Mur. It must be a mutation. I looked at her confused. I highly doubt that, Lyd. In the entire course of the virus, there were only 2 mutations found. And those mutations showed only a small variation that did nothing to change the actual virus. What else could explain this? I'm not sure. Abad cleared his throat. The patients who've tested positive have been quarantined in medical, but we're going to quickly run out of room there. I went through the roster on this ship, and besides my medical crew, there are 39 passengers that are medical professionals, and I've collected them all. What do you want us to do? I asked. You're a vet. I don't need you to do anything unless an animal gets sick. I need Micah Murray's expertise. Lydia's face went red with anger. He has a PhD in biochemistry as well as his DVM. I won't do this without his help. Abad dropped his head slightly. Very well. I apologize for any offense. It's just a very stressful time right now. We need all the help we can get. Dr. Parman wrote a number on the whiteboard. 345 passengers who have been exposed, 57 who have been confirmed. What does this tell us? Lockdown. Immediately. The entire ship. A big red-headed man named Sexton said. I found out quickly that he ran security on the ship and was also a paramedic. If we don't, it'll end up like Boston. A shit show. Trust me, I was there. Absolutely, I nodded. Boston was one of the first areas hit by the virus, and our lack of preparedness was catastrophic for the city. I almost died there. I moved to make Sexton the head of the response team on the ship, checking on people, coordinating the field tests, handing out masks, and most importantly, explaining the situation in a way that won't cause panic. Can't imagine anyone more qualified. I concur, Lydia said. Sexton nodded in approval. I'll make sure it's done. What else do we need? Dr. Parman asked. We need to trace the source of the virus on this ship, Lydia said. I think this falls well within our fields of expertise. It'll also ensure that the medical doctors and nurses are free to treat patients. Thank you, Dr. Parman said. We'd appreciate that. Let's get this done, and I pray to God that we see this through without too many deaths. No one responded, but we shared an awkward glance between us. We all knew the spiral virus claims 85% of those infected. Lydia put on her hazmat suit, respirator, and gloves. One of the field doctors handed me another set of protective equipment, but I shook my head. You don't want it? I pulled up my sleeve, revealing the red scar that spiraled from wrist to elbow. I'm immune. You survived? That's amazing, the field doctor said, astonished. At least take the suit so you don't have to destroy your clothes. He had a worried smile on his face as he nodded. Graciously, I put on the hazmat suit and looked at the list of patients. Lydia hovered over my shoulder. I think we should start with the first 10 who had symptoms and follow their exposure route? I nodded. It's a good place to start, Lyd. So we divided the patients between us. We could find patient 0 faster that way. I reviewed the chart of my first patient, Natalie Scott, 26-year-old female. She showed symptoms of hemorrhagic fever and a spiral pattern rash on her clavicle. I went to her bedside. Hi, Natalie. My name is Dr. Murray. I'm trying to track down the source of the outbreak, and I'd like to ask you some questions. Would that be okay? Natalie nodded. When did you first experience symptoms? Was it before or after boarding? She coughed, struggled to breathe. Her face was pale. The color on her cheeks had faded long ago. After. It began this morning. Very good. I forced a smile. Shakily, I wrote the answer on my clipboard, but I struggled to keep my surprise subdued. This shouldn't be possible. The virus never moved this fast before. Has anyone else in your family had symptoms? She pointed down the row of beds. Everyone. My brother, my parents. Only my grandmother isn't sick. Odd. The elderly, in general, were more susceptible to the virus. Considering the circumstances, her grandmother could be a significant case. I only made a few notes on my clipboard when Natalie grabbed my wrist and pulled me in. Her fingers were cold iron. My grandma, she said, it came in the night. Natalie whispered, Find her, please. She released her grip. I rubbed the spiral scar where she grabbed me. Perhaps it was just in my head, but I swore it felt hot. Came in the night. I couldn't get what Natalie said out of my head. I continued down my half of the list to stay focused. The rest of the patient's symptoms had started after Natalie and her family, and this might be it. They could be the source. But what the hell was she babbling about her grandmother? It sounded like a hallucination to me, though the look on her eyes, that desperate animal look, gave me pause. If nothing else, I had to check on her grandmother to make sure she wasn't infected. Also, if her grandmother had the spiral virus before, maybe she was an asymptomatic carrier? Perhaps she'd built up enough defenses not to get sick, but not enough to stop being a carrier. The thought turned my stomach. It couldn't be possible. But if it was, then could I be an asymptomatic carrier? No. I pushed that thought right out of my head. Now wasn't the time for doubts. I met with Lydia to discuss our results. 2 others, a man in his 50s named Porter and a woman in her 70s, said very strange but similar things. They both babbled about something coming in the night, last night, just before people got sick. There's nothing there, just fever hallucinations, Lydia said. Shared hallucinations with an eerie similarity? I asked. Lydia bit her lip and was silent for a moment. Maybe shared, but look at the bed chart. They're all within hearing distance of each other. If one started babbling about this, the others could have overheard and latched onto it in their delirium. I put my gloved hand over hers. You should rest. It's late. Take 5 hours and isolate yourself in our cabin. Clean the PPE, get something to eat, and recover some energy. She nodded. The worst is yet to come, and you should rest too. Come with me. No, I said. I have something else I need to look into. Then I will. Chapter 4. What Lurks Beneath. I went to Natalie's cabin to see her grandmother, but first, I needed some fresh air. I took the elevator up to the top deck. The sea breeze brought the cool scent of salt to my nose. The chill felt good on my sweaty face. I watched the moon dance among the clouds for several minutes. My eyes wandered back and forth between it and the spire, that massive, misshapen screw in orbit. It was huge, miles wide and many more miles long. It looked closer. No, it felt closer. It couldn't be my imagination. It had to be moving. The spire seemed to draw me in, drink my consciousness, calm me in a way. The possibilities of the spire were endless. What if an alien civilization sent it here? Or maybe it was their ship. NASA had sent a probe to the spire a few years ago. The initial readings indicated the surface was a type of strange rock. It had a smooth, oily texture, but was harder than anything we'd seen. The material was unknown, according to the report. It didn't match anything on our periodic table. Unfortunately, that was all the information we could obtain before the lander stopped responding. And the shape? A giant, screw-like object with perfect angles and slope. It couldn't have been created naturally, and that only left more questions. What was its point of origin? Was it sent here on purpose? A hand grabbed my shoulder. I spun around, shaken from my thoughts. Lydia? Yes, love. What are you doing up here? I just came out for some fresh air. Weren't you supposed to be resting? She nodded. Yeah, I did. I've been in the cabin for 6 hours. 6 hours? You can't be serious. I just walked up here. Lydia was concerned. Are you sure you're all right? Wait, what's happening? I was distracted by a small group of nurses, paramedics, and other medical staff gathering at the railing. Some were pointing at the water. I could hear gasps and murmurs coming from the crowd. I followed their gaze into the deep. A shadow, as big as a house, drifted just under the surface. What the hell is that? Lydia nodded. This isn't the first. There are other reports of large, black masses in the water all around the ship, and some people have claimed to see impossible things. Impossible? What's impossible? I looked at Lydia, perplexed. She had an irritated frown on her face. Creatures, monsters, I don't believe a word of it, though, she scoffed. People are just trying to stir up panic. That's a bit silly, I laughed. There's definitely something in the water, but monsters? I can think of a few things that could do that in nature. Only question is, why would they be here, so close to the surface? But I was getting distracted. My head felt fuzzy, and I had to get back on track. Our patients, how many have died? Lydia shook her head. Over 100. What? That's impossible. There were only half that number of confirmed cases just, a couple hours ago, right? I looked at Lydia, perplexed. She was obviously concerned. Was I really standing here for 6 hours? It felt like minutes. I must be tired. What's happening on this ship, Lyd? She grabbed my hands and pulled me in close. I don't know, Mur. None of this makes any sense. It doesn't match any of the data we've collected over the past 10 years. I don't know what to do. I looked toward the sky. The spire loomed overhead. I could feel it, drawing closer. Go, I said. Back to the cabin. Lock it. Only let me in. What do you mean? Why? Just go, I insisted. This outbreak is unprecedented. I can't lose you, Lyd. I'm immune, and you're not. She pushed me away. No, Mur. I'm a goddamn doctor, and people need my help. I can't just walk away. If I lose my life to save others, then it'd be worth it. Not to me. The stern look on my face said I wasn't going to budge, and she knew it. Lydia sighed. A compromise, then? I'll stay in the cabin if you promise to bring me data and information to work on. I have to help, Mur, no matter what. Agreed, I said, resigned. I have to go see a grandmother, whom I hope is still alive. I left Lydia as she went back to the cabin. I made my way to the front portion of the ship, down a corridor to cabin A-17, Natalie's cabin. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again. Nothing. A security guard approached. What are you doing here? It's a lockdown. I'm Dr. Murray, and I'm under instructions from the captain to investigate this outbreak. The security guard nodded. He wasn't going to question me at a time like this. Can you help me out? What do you need? Do you have an access card to this cabin? It might be the source of the outbreak. He nodded. Aren't you going to wear a mask or anything? I shook my head. I had the virus before. I'm immune. He swiped a card across the access pad and the door unlocked. He then retreated back down the hall to his post. I opened the door. My nostrils were assailed by the stench of death, but everything else in the room seemed rather neat. Moonlight filtered in through the uppermost porthole windows. The bottom portholes were under the surface of the water, where no light could come through. I moved into the small communal room, past the bathroom, and toward the bedroom further down the hall. Something was there. Probably dead, I assumed. I knew because the smell came from this direction, and the door was closed, but I had to cover my nose with my shirt. I opened the door. Horror gripped me, and I froze. My brain reeled. It didn't make sense. What was in that room defied every ounce of logic I had. I saw her. The grandmother. Sitting on the bed. And she was melting. Like ice cream in the sun. It wasn't death I smelled, it was something worse. Something fishy and defiled. Everything inside me screamed not to step foot in the room. Everything told me to flee. But I couldn't. I had to know more. I walked into the room and turned on the standing lamp next to the door, too afraid to turn on the overhead lights and reveal the entire maddening sight. "Hello," she said. Her voice sloshed out of her throat, making her sound sick and guttural. "How do you like my new body?" I walked halfway into the room, not daring to get within an arm's reach. What happened? The words came out of my mouth, barely louder than a whisper. "It came in the night. Last night. A merman," she said. "A merman came to you last night?" She turned her bulbous, melting head towards the porthole next to her bed. Her eyes bulged, her lips protruded, her skull misshapen. She appeared to have the characteristics of a blobfish. "A merman. Looked like that monster from the old movie, but he was real." Her face twisted unnaturally with each word. I could only stare in response. A million questions went through my head, and I couldn't look away. I studied her for a moment more, and noticed the webbing between her fingers. "He spoke to me, said we could be free and live eternal in the ocean. He reached through the wall. He touched me." She struggled to speak, though not as bad as I would have assumed just by looking at her. I finally had the nerve to ask, "Did he come for your family too?" She shook her head. "I touched them after. I want to be free with my family in the ocean." She smiled, parting those massive, bulbous lips to reveal spiked teeth behind them, and she reached for me. I jumped back and slammed the door. I sprinted out of the cabin and closed the main entry. "What's going on?" The security guard from earlier came running over. "What happened?" I panted, more from the adrenaline rush than the run. I looked up at the security guard. "Can you lock the door?" "Yeah, it locks automatically from the outside." No. Lock it so nothing gets out." He looked hesitant. "Why?" "The dead, the infection, it could spread. Lock it, please." "So, nothing gets out?" he asked, extremely skeptical. "Yes, damn it! This is a medical emergency. Do you want to get infected?" "Well, no." "I'm the fucking doctor. Listen to me. Lock it." The security guard reached into his pocket, retrieving the end of a keychain attached to his duty belt, and withdrew a small black card. "This should do the trick." He slid it across the access pad. It emitted a series of beeps, and the latch clicked. "Thank you," I said. I left him there and headed back to medical. The first thing I heard as I approached medical was cheering. I sprinted. Why were people cheering? What the hell was going on now? I entered medical to see doctors and nurses hugging, crying, and laughing. What the hell is going on here? I yelled. One doctor grasped me by the shoulder. It's a miracle. They've recovered. All of them. Slow down. What are you saying? The virus, ETNV 2020, every single person infected suddenly broke their fever, stopped hemorrhaging, and tested negative for the virus. I pushed him back. No, that can't happen. That doesn't happen. What is going on here? This news did nothing to make me forget about Natalie's grandmother, who had turned into a melting giant fish woman. See for yourself, he said. No, I need to see Lydia. And as if on cue, Lydia turned the corner. Mur, it's real. They're healed. I grabbed Lydia and pulled her into the hallway. It's not real. Something evil is happening here. Her face distorted, confused. Evil? Love, it's just a virus. No, I said in a hushed whisper. No, it's not just a virus. I found patient 0, Natalie's grandmother. Is she sick? She's something. I don't know how to describe it. I paused. She doesn't have the virus, it's something else. She's changed. Changed how? Into a fish. And she seems to be melting. Lydia smiled as if about to laugh and then smirked. Fish, melting, are you okay, Mur? This was maddening. I shoved Lydia away and ran. I couldn't be there, not then. This wasn't right. People were acting strange. They weren't right. Nothing was. The sudden and spontaneous recovery of every patient, that fish-looking woman swimming in a pool of her own flesh on the bed, and a merman reaching through a solid porthole to touch her and turn her into something. I ran upstairs to the top deck and continued until I found myself outside the bridge. Captain Abad found me as he entered. Doctor, did you hear about the patients? Yeah, I said. Incredible news. It's all thanks to my medical team and you, the heroes, who volunteered safety and time to help my passengers. You must be exhausted. I looked up at him. He reeled back at the obvious fright on my face. This isn't over, I said. Far from it. Sir, bridge operator said, bursting through the door. Sir, we just got a transmission from the USS Zumwalt. It was an emergency alert to all mariners. What did they say? The Spire is moving towards Earth, sir. The Spire? Captain Abad looked at me with as much horror as I felt, and he shook his head to focus his thoughts. Is it dangerous? What do they think is going to happen? Sir, we lost all communications right after we received that transmission. It was our last transmission. I pushed past Abad and bolted down the stairs towards the main deck. I was right. It wasn't my imagination. The Spire had moved. I ran onto the deck and up to the railing. The morning sun was just peeking over the horizon, but I could see it. The Spire. It seemed even bigger than the previous night, and had tilted by another margin of degrees once again. The crew and assorted medical staff gathered alongside the railing next to me, but I was the only one looking up. They pointed, clapped, and cheered. The noise of splashing drew my attention from the Spire towards the water. Dolphins, and there was something with the dolphins. No, that's not real, I said. It can't be. What's going on here? My heart raced, and my mind spun. What were those shimmering humanoids jumping out of the water alongside the dolphins? Mermaids? The words fell from my lips like a dribble. And everyone cheered. Someone yelled, "Listen to their song! It's a blessing!" Mermaids didn't exist, but everyone seemed happy, overjoyed. The mermaids and dolphins were dancing across the water, they said. But something churned in my gut. I felt like vomiting. This wasn't joyous. This wasn't a blessing. In a panic, I looked again at the water, and then at the faces of those around me. Did no one else see what I saw? How could they not have seen? The mermaids, they weren't smiling. They weren't happy. They were ravenous and bearing sharp teeth, wailing, not singing. And then it began. Passengers on the deck were screaming. People were throwing themselves overboard. The water turned red. Mermaids thrashed at those who had fallen, biting and tearing at their flesh like a pack of sharks. The dolphins screamed, ramming each other and the mermaids in a frenzy. I looked up and saw the spire looming overhead. I knew at that moment. The connection was clear. The spire was the cause for it all. The virus, everything. I stared at it, transfixed. In awe, I couldn't look away. The horrific scene played out around me and my thoughts drifted away. The spire. Was it intelligent? Was it dead or alive? What was its purpose? Time seemed to stretch. Minutes became hours as the sun rose on a new day. Thank you for listening to The Waters of Madness Part 1. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to get a hold of us, please refer to the email link in the description. We hope you're looking forward to The Waters of Madness Part 2